Steven Crowder has recently uploaded a YouTube video called Vice Rebuttal, Transitioning Children as Child Abuse, where Steven, the medical expert, rebuttals a mini documentary published by Vox. In Steven's video, he intentionally lies and misleads his audience into thinking that putting children on puberty blockers is child abuse.
Something else, they're talking about young children.
Yeah.
Here's something I want to genuinely know, because weighing their options because of how their children feel. Some of these kids are 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
We don't allow 8-year-olds to make decisions about anything, specifically sex, right? You don't allow an 8-year-old cannot consent to sex. You don't allow them to make any sexual decisions, yet you are allowing them to make decisions that will permanently alter their sexual functioning and their social sex life for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
In what other scenario can you imagine us do? This is the only scenario where we allow 8-year-olds to make permanent, life-altering sexual decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, so here the first disingenuous argument that Steven makes here is that he conflates the multiple meanings of sex. Steven, in response to the use of hormone blockers on an 8-year-old going through puberty, said that an 8-year-old cannot consent to sex and that you don't allow them to make any sexual decisions. This is not a fair comparison to make, as hormone blockers have nothing to do with consenting to sex or anything sexual. All they do is give children suffering with gender dysphoria time to reflect upon their gender identity with little to no long-term side effects. Steven also states that administering hormone blockers can permanently alter their sexual functioning and their social sex life. This is not backed up by any sources in the video, and is not backed up by any sources that I could find. However, I did find a statement by the Provincial Health Service Authority, or PHSA, which said that puberty blockers are considered very safe overall. We are not sure if puberty blockers have a negative side effects on bone development and height. Research so far shows that the effects are minimal. This shows that the only long-term scientifically proven side effects are that bone development might be minimally affected. I'm not fully sure of what Steven means when he says social sex life, but I'm guessing that he might mean that those who use puberty blockers will be less likely to have sex when they're older, or maybe he means that they will have sex with different people. I really don't know what he means here, but the only long-term side effects of hormone blockers is slightly altered bone growth, but I fail to see how this would affect someone's social sex life.
What other scenario can you imagine us do? This is the only scenario where we allow 8-year-olds to make permanent, life-altering sexual decisions.
Yeah, and I think...
Okay, so here Steven claims, without any evidence, that hormone blockers are a permanent, life-altering decision. Once again, the only medically recognized side effects of hormone blockers is that it can slightly change bone density, which is not very life-altering unless you have an existing bone density disorder. If a child does have an existing bone density disorder, they will not be prescribed puberty blockers. So once again, Steven misleads his audience and completely fails to understand the long-term side effects of puberty blockers.
And they start off with a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
They start off with somebody who was maybe looking at transitioning at 3 and 4 years old. Like, and this entire thing is meant to think that this is such a hard life that we have to do this. So they're trying to set you up for an emotional pull,
Transitioning
not
at
science.
5 years old, you can't even swim without floaties, and you want to lop off your dick.
Yeah, no, that's.
I mean, the parents. I'm not talking to the 5-year-old kids because you can't even use these words.
Steven flat out lies here by saying that parents want to chop off their dick. Nowhere in the whole documentary did they ever talk about sex reassignment surgery, and definitely not with a 5-year-old. What actually happened, if you had actually watched the documentary, is that the 5-year-old girl felt like a girl, so the parents called her a girl and let her play with girls' toys. Nowhere whatsoever did they talk about surgically transitioning the 5-year-old girl or anything even close to that. All they were doing was calling her by her preferred pronouns. And this isn't even a situation where Steven just misspoke, because Steven actually featured this blatant lie at the start of his video.
Another one is really kind of the psychosocial development. Our brains are supposed to be, exposed to estrogen and testosterone. You know, if you're not getting your sex steroids, do you still go through that? And how important is that in gender identification? We don't know.
No, actually, we do know. Okay, so they're talking about giving hormone blockers to kids.
Right.
Giving them hormone blockers seems to lock them into a permanent condition of gender dysphoria. Yeah. This is something people don't talk about, and it's important. We'll come back to it. If the kids don't transition early on, about 75 to 90% of the kids completely grow out of it. But if you look at those who undergo the puberty blockers, drugs, commonly known as hormone blockers, but what are they uncommonly known as? You wouldn't be able to pronounce it. Well, just say hormone blockers. If you look at the kids who undergo hormone blockers, the number drops from 75 to 90% who grow out of it to zero. Great!
Oh, wow.
Okay?
That's incredible.
So let's get to some other.
Here, Stephen claims that puberty blockers lock children into transitioning. He cites a study which shows that children who showed any signs of gender dysphoria had a 75 to 90% chance of not going on to have gender dysphoria when they are older. He compares this with a study which tested 70 young individuals who took puberty blockers, and none of them decided to stop transitioning. This may sound like a fair comparison to make, but the first study only assessed those who had experienced any gender dysphoria whatsoever, whilst the second study assessed those who met the criteria of 1. Having long-lasting intense patterns of gender dysphoria or nonconformity, 2. Gender dysphoria worsened or emerged with the onset of puberty, and 3. Both parents and the child have given full consent to the procedure. All these criteria are assessed by a qualified therapist, and all areas have to be fully met. If not, the individual cannot receive a prescription for the puberty blockers. This means that the comparison here is not a fair one, as the participants in each study have to meet a very different criteria. Another thing to add is that the second study that Stephen cited concluded that puberty suppression may be considered a valuable contribution in the clinical management of gender dysphoria in adolescents, which completely contradicts Stephen's point that he was trying to make.
If Max changes his mind at any point, we can release the blockade, and we know from lots of papers of experience
Star Wars?
that he will go into puberty on his own, a female puberty.
To me, blockers is, again, it's not a permanent thing. It just puts a pause for a while.
No, it is much more severe than putting a pause.
That is
By the
wrong.
way, isn't it nice that you could just say, it just puts a pause. A pause to what? A pause to the fusing of growth plates and proper hormonal development, as long with facial structure, ligaments, overall connective tissue. He really could be walking around like he has rickets. We don't know. It can hormone blockers can permanently affect height. Okay, girls can have a male growth spurt. Guys can end up with a female stature. Okay?
Yeah.
These are not things that you can correct.
Stephen makes a few claims here. First, he says that puberty blockers could cause rickets. He doesn't cite any sources for this, and it is not backed up medically at all, and has no scientific basis. After this, Stephen actually makes a point that isn't a flat-out lie, saying that it negatively affects height. This is well known, however, and would have been made clear to both the parents and the child. Being slightly taller could actually be considered a good thing by many people, and the height difference displayed isn't even very significant. Stephen goes on to say that girls can have a male growth spurt and guys can end up with a female stature. This is not medically proven, and Stephen once again does not cite anything to back up his claim. I think Stephen is confusing the effects of hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, with the effects of puberty blockers, as HRT can cause these things to happen, but puberty blockers have never been proved to do any of these things.
Remember, by the way, while we're talking about this, do you remember as a kid when they used to tell you, don't drink coffee, it might stunt your growth? Yes. They used to say, don't, or no lifting weights, and we're like, don't lift weights too young, don't drink coffee. And like, oh, I might shave off 1.5 inches. But now we're talking about pumping their bodies full of estrogen or foreign hormones. But it is.
Stephen says here that doctors are pumping them full of estrogen or foreign hormones. This is clearly a flat-out lie, as puberty blockers do neither of these things. Puberty blockers do not release any estrogen or foreign hormones, and instead limit the release of hormones such as estrogen or testosterone, which is the complete opposite of what Stephen is saying, and is once again a blatant lie on his behalf.
But it is remarkable to me that they just say, they act as though, this is just very mild, We can just put you on hormone-altering puberty blockers, and if you don't like it, you could go back. Well, no, hold on a second. First, do no harm, right? You've heard of that with doctors. How about we don't put them on hormone blockers and see if they figure it out, especially when 75 to 90% of them don't end up having gender dysmorphia for the rest of their life anyway. And by the way, while we're talking about hormone blockers, it's important to note that even having naturally low levels of a lot of these hormones can damage the human body. Right? So low testosterone in men linked to diabetes, heart problems, obesity, other hormones, particularly in women, estrogen, they help contribute to mental well-being. Low levels strongly correlated with increased suicide attempts. This is something to think about. We already have a certain demographic here, transgenders with an insanely high suicide rate.
Yeah.
Do we really want to start to severely alter hormones which directly correlate to one's mental state at a younger age? By the way,
This claim that going on puberty blockers will result in a higher diabetes risks or higher suicide rate is misleading. If someone decides to go off puberty blockers, they will go through a normal puberty and their testosterone and estrogen levels will go back to being the same as they would have usually been. This means that the problems brought about by low testosterone or estrogen levels can easily be reversed just by going off puberty blockers and then experiencing a normal puberty.
We're trying to do is provide the treatment, the care for young people who, in the absence
Is she Asian
of
or just very
that
scowly?
care,
I can't tell.
have a very high likelihood of taking their lives. So my sense is cross-sex hormones, pubertal blockers are absolutely medically necessary.
that's your feeling. Only it's wrong. It is not true.
How does that pass as a medical opinion?
Well, here's the thing they don't talk about. People with gender dysphoria who undergo surgery, they're still 19 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population. You cannot find that kind of a demographic anywhere outside of, from what I understand, paranoid schizophrenics. You don't even find it in the demographics of American slaves or Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
But we're
insane.
supposed to believe because they couldn't
That's a
take
big
a
one.
dump at their preferred bathroom at a Denny's. That's why you find them hanging from a noose in the basement.
Yeah.
Listen, it's not that people have no compassion, right? We're just talking about the science and we're looking at the actual solutions to the problem, which, just in the opinion of most people here, is not pumping a 5-year-old full of drugs known as hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Stephen makes the claim here that suicide rates aren't caused by being denied the appropriate bathrooms. This actually does have a significant impact on the suicide rates, as people who are denied access to the appropriate bathrooms are 19% more likely to attempt suicide, according to a study performed by the Williams Institute. This study also revealed that those who were denied medical service were 20% more likely to attempt suicide, meaning that it is actually necessary for transgender people to have access to these medical procedures, or else the suicide rate will increase, causing more needless deaths. Restricting these people from accessing these medical services will not help them in any way, but would actually worsen the suicide problem. Also, Stephen just lies here by saying that they are pumping 5-year-olds full of puberty blockers. This is not the case, and Stephen gives no evidence to suggest that any 5-year-old has ever been put on puberty blockers. The 5-year-old in the documentary was not put on any drugs and was simply just being called a girl.
We are literally talking about completely eliminating the entire concept of gender, by extension the family, the nuclear family, the central building block for all of Western civilization's way of life. This is probably the most important issue that we're facing today. Saying that men and women are of no intrinsic value, are not unique, and are fundamentally interchangeable from as early as 5 years old. It will make us worse husbands, it will make us worse fathers, it will make us worse mothers, it will make us worse parents overall, and it'll make us a weaker people. By the way, this is all done predicated on the idea that doing this is compassionate.
Stephen ends the video by saying that the left is eliminating the entire concept of gender. This is not true, as these people are simply just deciding what gender they would like to be seen as, which is completely different, again, to eliminating the entire concept of gender. Stephen also says that the left is destroying the nuclear family, the central building block for all of the Western civilization's way of life. No one is looking to destroy the concept of a nuclear family here, or destroy Western civilization's way of life. People are simply enacting their right to express themselves and are not in any way trying to destroy the nuclear family. He then goes on to say that the left also say that men and women are of no intrinsic value. No one says this. Stephen doesn't quote anyone here, and is just making a ridiculous, unfounded statement. Stephen then makes the ridiculous claim that being transgender will make us worse husbands, and will make us worse fathers, and it will make us worse mothers, and it will make us worse parents overall. It will make us weaker people. This is not backed up by any evidence, once again, and studies show that there is no evidence of the effect of child's developmental milestones when being brought up by transgender parents, meaning that transgender parents are just as capable of raising children. So Stephen Crowder's statement is a flat-out lie, and he's just arguing from his feelings. In conclusion, you should take away from this video that Steven Crowder knowingly lied about what was happening in the Vox video. He failed to understand the long-term side effects of puberty blockers. He repeatedly conflated puberty blockers with hormone replacement therapy and gender reassignment surgery. He constantly made unfounded claims without backing it up with any evidence. And he claimed that the left used anti-scientific rhetoric, whilst lying and misleading his audience multiple times. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Please, if you have any disagreements, post it in the comments down below. I will try and respond to most of them. Also, I will be linking down all my sources in the description, so if you want to take a look at them for yourself, that's fine.